Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together, we've watched a sci-fi movie, we talk about it. It is really that simple. And coming up on this episode, we will be talking about Arrival, the Denis Villeneuve film from 2016. Of course, we're doing this. We planned on doing this before his new Dune came out, but we didn't quite have time, so we're doing it the following episode. So we're here to talk about this. We've both seen this before, of course. We saw it when it came out, but we're revisiting it, and we're seeing how it holds up 5 years later. That's right, it's been 5 years already since this came out. I don't think anyone feels it's been that long, but it is. So,
and he's had two more movies. That's pretty good.
So we're going to get into it. We'll start spoiler free, of course. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers. The first thing you need to know, though, is that this film's cast. Before we get to anything else, we have Tara's cousin, not this Tara from the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The actress who played her cousin, as well as an actor who played a serial killer, maybe vampire. It's been a long time since I've seen the episode, but on the spin-off of the hit television show, Angel. That's the two leads of this movie. We have actors who did one episode stints on Buffy and Angel. That is Amy Adams.
And this is why this is your favorite Villeneuve film.
And Jeremy Renner. That is not why. That is not why. But this occurred to me like halfway through the episode that both of them had weird, like, young role, like guest spots on episodes.
Sure.
It's not the funny one for Amy Adams. The funny one for Amy Adams was the episode of Smallville she did, in which she got really fat. It's terrible.
She was in the first season of The Office also, as the lady that everybody wanted to sleep with. She was like Pam 2.0 or something.
I don't remember that, but I believe it.
Well, it was the end of the first season of The Office, which a lot of people skip.
I mean, I didn't skip it.
The American Office. Maybe you were confused by that.
I was not confused by that. I was under no moment of hesitation thinking you were referring to the British version of The Office. So, yes. But yeah, so that's our main two characters. Forrest Whitaker's also in there. Worth mentioning.
Oh yeah.
The premise.
Who was not in the hit television show Star Trek: The Next Generation. I just thought I'd throw that out there. They're all connected in that way also.
The entire premise of this and the type of science fiction it is lends itself to natural Star Trek comparisons later, and you wasted that on that?
I just felt the need to put out a useless connection.
I was going to bring up
You could say I was inspired.
I was going to bring up Star Trek later anyway, right? And you brought it up like that. That was terrible.
I don't think so. That was revenge.
So the premise of this movie is that aliens arrive on Earth in their big, weird, monolith-esque ships that just hover above the ground in 12 locations on the planet. And our main characters are brought in. They are experts in their field. Amy Adams plays a linguist, and Jeremy Renner is a mathematician. And they're brought in to try and communicate with these aliens who are kind of opening up and letting some, personnel go in and try and communicate with them. So it's a movie, much like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's a movie about communication.
Yeah, I was going to warn you before we started. I said, don't you dare bring this up.
Well, you didn't know, so you can't be mad at me.
Because I didn't want to remind you of it in case you forgot.
Oh, I remember. Don't you worry. I remember.
You're such an asshole.
Honestly, I wasn't even sure if you were going to remember. I thought I was going to crack a joke about that and just have you be like, why are you putting up Close Encounters? What is this?
Well, when we talk about Contact, I'm not going to remember.
Okay.
Just let it die.
It's not like it's a running joke I bring up every week. I only brought it up during this because I remember especially referencing this movie when we talked about Close Encounters. This was just me making a callback to a much, much, much earlier review. So the long-time mega fans will appreciate that reference.
Yeah.
So yes,
Appreciate it.
it's a movie about communication. It's not a shooty bang bang movie. It's not a big action movie, which may have something to do with the fact that it didn't do very well financially when it was released, much like every Villeneuve movie, except maybe his new one. So, with that said, we'll get into our general opinions. Tara already gave mine away by telling you all it was my favourite Villeneuve film. It is my favourite Villeneuve film. It's still my favourite Villeneuve film. And honestly, watching this again, like, the gulf for me between this and, like, Blade Runner 2049 is massive. Like, it is... There's a crevice. There is a crevice between those two films for me. This is vastly superior. I am going to be praising the shit out of this. Buckle in, everyone. Buckle in. I've got a sled, and you know, instead of reindeer, on one side I've got Amy Adams, the other side I've got Jeremy Renner, and at the front of Villeneuve, and they're running and making me fly. They're making me fly, and it's not even Christmas. But I'm floating. I'm floating in the air.
Wow. I mean, I think it's high praise.
That is
you weren't subtle enough, so I don't know.
Tara, what do you think of Arrival?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's pretty good. Pretty good. I liked it when I saw it in the theater. I think I saw it twice because I enjoyed the twist so much that I wanted to watch it again with new eyes, and enjoyed it very much. So still enjoyed it this time. I'll never have that like first time experience watching it, but it was still great. You'll hear high praise from me as well.
I'm sorry, was I too animated during my segment? You just didn't feel like aiming for anything there?
I felt like toning it down, you know, in the spirit of Villeneuve. Grounding things a bit.
Okay.
I'm happy you like this movie so much, though. It's nice to hear you talk nice about like a clearly talented director in the field of science fiction filmmaking.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. The salt because I don't love Blade Runner 2049 and don't outright love the new Dune. Here we go. I'm sorry, the characters in this are better. The story is better. The ideas are better.
The story is better than Dune.
Yes.
How dare you?
The story is better than Dune. It's more interesting. It's more inventive. And what's really surprising about that?
That's harsh.
What's surprising about that to me, right? And I'm talking about, like, before people get into my case here, I'm not talking about the book, okay? I'm not saying that Frank Herbert's book is not some treasured thing, right? I ain't talking about that. I'm just talking about the story as it's presented in the movie, with, you know, our bland lead character. Anyway, so a point I wanted to make about this, and this is just something that I'm remembering from when I stumbled into this talking about something else. It might have even been on the show. No, it was not. It was on Screams After Midnight. I found this out. The writer of this movie, right? Now, it's based on another story or a book or something. But
like a novella.
Yeah. The screenwriter, though, of this movie is a hack. Everything else he's done is shit. In fact, no, one of these things was on this show.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we've talked about him.
Yeah. Bloodshot. Same writer as this. Bird Box. Same writer as this. Lights Out. Same writer as this. The 2011 version of The Thing. Same writer as this.
Okay. I don't remember hating Lights Out. That's the one with the, like, they turn the lights out and there's like a silhouette of a woman. Right? It's a good trailer.
It had a very promising idea mechanically, but I felt the movie didn't do enough with it. And its third act. I was expecting Home Alone with a ghost, but with like light-based traps in the final act, and instead they barely used it. It was really disappointing. But anyway, I've not even gotten to the worst one yet. this guy wrote the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street, which is an absolute travesty of a film. So,
well, they can't all be the writers of Rocket Man.
Are you trying to say that's the inverse of this, where that's the writer of Chernobyl did one really bad thing, and then went on to do good stuff like Chernobyl? Is that what you're saying?
So they can't all like just knock out 10 out of 10 every time.
This is fascinating to me because, but I think, you know, I encountered this guy's name probably on streams first, and then again we did Bloodshot, and
Bloodshot was not the worst. It was, I mean, it was kind of bad, but like it wasn't the worst.
But come on now, like, are you again? We're back to the word gulf. Are you not seeing the gulf between Arrival and everything else I just read out?
I mean, people gotta pay bills. Let me check.
What are you looking up? What's the stalling tactic?
I'm looking at the Eric Heiserer. Bird Box was all right.
Bird Box?
Bird Box? The one where they're not allowed to see the Cthulhu creatures?
Bird Box, yes.
Yeah, Bird Box.
I'm pretty sure the first time you said it, you didn't say that, but...
What did you think I said?
It sounded like BritBox.
No. Oh, look, he's writing a Van Helsing screenplay. That's exciting.
It's not. Based on the rest of his work, it's not.
He did Final Destination 5.
Which I actually enjoy that movie, but it's not because it's a good movie. Like, the dialogue and the acting in that movie is terrible, but it's a fun, bad horror movie.
Well, we know he's capable of doing something good. Maybe the difference is Denis Villeneuve.
I mean, largely it very well might be, but I also suspect that the fact that it's based on a source material that I presume had all the good ideas in it. Like, none of the ideas in this movie probably came from him. And so much of this movie as well, because of how it presents the story, and because I imagine that this movie probably moved around a lot in the edit. Like, I feel like a lot of the flow was probably created in the edit and probably different from the script. No, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everything... Because there are good reasons why certain things appear to us when they do, narratively speaking. But those choices could have been made later, or the choices that Villeneuve himself could have made to the script after it was written. Like, these are all things that could have just been moved around to work better later. So, I don't know. But,
right.
Anyway, like, the point is that this guy has done nothing but mediocre to shit in every other movie he's written. But somehow Arrival is like this excellent piece of science fiction. And I don't know how this happened, but somehow it did. So
it's Denis. He's
a one-hit wonder. And you know what? It's a good one hit to have. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean to shit on him too much, but it is shocking. So there's that. Actually, I'm going to get a negative out of the way just before I get into positives.
Sure.
I do think the movie's color palette is it's not even a color palette. This is a problem I have with every so often I'll have with a new movie. It basically sums up to me looking to Denis Villeneuve in the eyes and saying, "What have you got against contrast?" Because the movie looks kind of washed out like all the time, and I wish it didn't. I just wished it was a bit more contrasty. I know that sounds like a really weird nitpick, but it is kind of like a distracting when it just look, because every so often I'm like, is my TV not set up properly? If I like turned a setting up by accident? And I've not. It's just this movie has kind of a washed out look to it because the contrast is too low. So not a huge deal, but it is always there.
It's a look. I mean, it sort of looks like everything's just a bit dreary, which matches the attitude of our lead character, though.
It does, but you can have that with contrast, though. You can still have it be like a muted color palette with contrast.
I think it's okay. I mean, when you see high contrast, you kind of think of something a bit more fun. This isn't a fun film. There's a lot of dread in it, and a lot of like, I don't know, just focusing on the facts.
I'm not saying high contrast. I'm saying a normal amount of contrast that looks like the TV's not broken. That's all I want.
I still think it's a good looking film. I love the visuals, like of the spacecraft.
No, I agree with that. Some of the actual composition and some of the effects and like the cinematography itself is mostly very good. I'm just talking purely about what they've done in color correction and like their tone of the tone mapping of the film is just a bit too on the I hate contrast side of things, and I don't know why, because I don't like it. So it's a relatively minor thing to point out, but it is also always there. It never changes. Yeah. It's always looks like that. And your eyes adjust to it a bit after a while, but if for any reason I have to like pause and go to the bathroom or something when I come back, like that first minute or two when I sit back down again, like I have the feeling again. I'm like, oh shit, why does this look so off? So minor quibble. And that's not like it's something that's persisted with these other films. It's not like I watched when we did Blade Runner 2049 earlier this year. It's not like I watched that and went, oh, what's this color palette all about? Like that, very vivid. It's a very vivid film, that one.
It is, yeah.
Ain't disputing that.
Same with Sicario.
Sure. But yes, you can have muted colors, but still have contrast. So.
Yeah, maybe it was just the style at the time, also.
Yeah, it's
5 years ago.
It's not the only film I've seen it in, right? I don't have any other examples off the top of my head, but I always hate it when I see it. So. Yes. Sound mix though, a technical thing though I'll swing into a positive though is the 5.1 mix in this. Like there's a moment early on in the film where Amy Adams is just walking to her car. She's just like, she's at work, she's walking to her car, and there's like a couple of jets fly overhead, and they damn near made me shit myself because they were so loud, and that, I've got the 5.1 sound, so it actually flew over my head, and it was like, ah, you bastard, you. So there's a lot of good sound mixing to really give it certain things an oomph. I was noticing it quite a bit throughout this movie.
Me too. I just have that little dinky sound bar.
It's better than a TV speaker. So.
Yeah, but it was pretty effective on that too.
Yeah. No, so I could sound mix. No denying that. So. Yeah, no, visuals are good. It's got a very like that first shot of when they're flying towards the ship and the helicopters, and you've just got the fog kind of. But you're so high up in this wide view, this wide shot that you can see the shape of the fog moving, which is very unnatural. And it's probably like, I'm sure if you got a drone or something, or you got a camera up high enough and went somewhere that was like this, that had this fog, it would probably be how that fog looks in real life, right? If you got it from that vantage point. But because we don't normally see fog from that distance, we just see, our vision's just filled with fog. That's just what it looks like.
Right.
It looks so alien, even though I'm sure the fog itself, in the context of this, is not alien at all. But it feels alien because we're seeing it from this vantage.
Yeah. And speaking of alien, like I love it is, like you said, a very monolithic shape. Just it's like a half egg shape almost, but giant, and it's just sort of hovering at an angle that you don't necessarily see in these films. For when they depict aliens visiting, it's always like a saucer, but this one's turned up on its side, which is a very like non-threatening pose. So maybe that's on purpose, but it does seem like a little bit off for some reason. So, I don't know. It's a very simple maneuver that I think works really effectively.
I think, I use the word monolithic because it makes me think of the monolith because it's standing vertically.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, it's intimidating, but it's not like... But it has the same sense of mystery as a monolith in 2001 kind of does. Obviously, the film is very different in every other way, but the idea of this simple image of this tall black... obviously in that it's a complete rectangle, whereas this is more of a weird curved thing. But
yes, but still a simple shape.
Yeah, still very simple. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, no, the visuals are great. Everything that's built around, like, they spend a lot of time the first time they go in. We see the whole process of like how they go in. They've got like a little forklift thing. And then it's not a forklift, you know what I mean? Just a little lift, the little.
Yeah, it opens up every, like, the ship will have an opening every 18 hours or something, and so they just have time to go inside. And yeah, and it is hovering, so even though it's on its side vertical, there's a little opening just at the base of it that is enough for the lift to reach it.
Yeah, and you've got like this, the way it plays with gravity, where they get to a certain point and the gravity inside the ship is like shifted, and so, but they spend a lot of time with them in the hazmat suits, so you get a lot of these up close shots of like how intense it feels and their heavy breathing the first time they're going in. So it really gives you this sense of spectacle, this sense of awe. And this is all just directing touches. This is all just like how to create a feeling of what the characters are going through before it gets to the meat of the actual like science fiction of the film.
Yeah, it does a really great job of just building the anticipation of seeing them for the first time also. And just what the other characters are going through, and most of them are just getting sick in the process, or I guess there are people who've been like wheeled away before Amy Adams gets there because they're sort of going crazy with the whole idea of interacting with an alien species.
Yeah, not everyone can handle it, and you have like, you know, the idea they have to quarantine before they go in and out, and like just all these little things that give it this very methodical, science-based approach, and that's one of the things.
Military approach, yeah.
And that's one of the things that the movie really succeeds in, is this idea of like it being about a linguist. Because who else? I mean, that's who you would get if a alien, or yeah, or even a human. Let's just say we found like a pocket of humans like on an island that we'd never discovered before, and they had their own language, and it was nothing. It didn't come from any other language. You would get in linguists to like figure this shit out, right? That's how you would have do it. And mathematicians make sense because math is a universal language, right? The logic of math still works regardless of where you come from or what you speak. 1 + 1 is still going to equal 2. It's that simple.
Yeah.
So
it is interesting to have a linguist as your main character for this, though. Like, obviously, it seems like the right decision, but we've never really dealt with that before in these films. Well, a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that we watch movies where aliens are invading us and for war or whatever, and there's no effort to make communication. But it is an interesting perspective, and I think the film does a really excellent job of teaching you the steps to communicate with aliens as well. Like, that is probably the most fascinating part of the film.
I think what you just said there that interests me the most is you said the reason why we've not maybe dealt with the linguist as a main character in an alien movie is because we tend to be dealing with like invasions and wars and action stuff. And I would argue that, not that you're wrong, but that the cause and effect is the other way around. It's that they want the action, so that's why they're always invading. You know, to put it in like a meta level, like the reason why it's never a linguist is not because, oh, the plot doesn't lend itself to tackling it that way. It's because they always create a plot that has the suspense and has the action and has the other things. And the reason why I'm making that point is because a lot of this film's themes are about the jump to mistrust and the jump to that type of action versus communication. And that's a big thing that we'll get into more as we get into spoilers and stuff, but I do think that's a very important part of the film. I mean, it's the most important part of the film, really. I mean, that's what, you know, earlier on when I said I was going to compare it to Star Trek, the story of this, and the reason why it didn't do that well, because sadly, if you do Star Trek the way Star Trek was supposed to be done in the first place, it doesn't do that well. They need the J.J. Abrams shooty bang bang lens flare Star Trek. That's what maybe makes some money if you're lucky. What doesn't make money is Picard trying to communicate with a sentient species and coming to an understanding or something like that. And this really is a throwback to that sort of more thinking person's science fiction. It's about the ideas, it's about having a message, it's about exploring a part of humanity and what makes us us, and what might make us better. What was something we could improve that will take us further, or, you know, something we can learn from. That's what this movie absolutely is in every sense of the word, and it having a character in the lead who isn't someone who's going to fire a blaster or whatever is part of the point.
Sure. Although we do still have the military, and we have people who represent the military, like, immediately say, well, we should be threatened by this. At, like, every turn.
They have to be there. Like, otherwise
Yeah.
you couldn't say make the points the movie's trying to make. You have to have representation from that
Right,
side of thinking. So, like, they're absolutely essential, but they're not the leads. And I think that's important. Like, this is not Independence Day.
No.
For a number of reasons.
It is a little Day the Earth Stood Still, though.
Yeah, it's another good example of, like, a movie that, you know, there's a reason why not a lot of movies like this get made these days. I mean, you get the feeling that maybe this is a bit cynical, but maybe the reason why a movie like Day the Earth Stood Still got made when it did, or why more get made back then when it did, is because, well, we don't have the effects or the money to do what modern movies do, where we can just have as much big action as we want without thinking about it. The CG will take care of everything. So they're almost forced to turn it into, like, well, we can have a little bit of spectacle, but it mostly has to be like debates. It has to be conversation. So we have to make that work.
Well, I mean, sure, but the point of the film isn't to have a war, it's to avoid war.
Yeah, and?
So, like, why would there be any spectacle in that if you're avoiding war?
What's your point?
I'm saying I think the movie was made not because they wanted to make a bang bang shoot shoot film. They wanted to make a movie about the dangers of nuclear weapons.
Okay. Let me. Okay, you're taking this to mean everyone. Like, I mean, like, the studio. I mean, like, why was it financed, kind of thing. Like, do you think that if Fox at the time had the choice of some spectacle film, they would have not went with that instead? They didn't know. They were for, you know, obviously.
Well,
obviously,
I mean, for every Day the Earth Stood Still, you get 20 of those movies.
Sure, but you know what I mean, though, right? Like, the director and the writer, sure, they had a thing to say. They were trying to make some sort of point. But I'm saying that movies like this don't get greenlit as much, especially not now, right? And sadly, because of how this performed, this just makes it more likely that they're not going to get greenlit, that they're not going to get funding for a movie like this.
Yeah.
Because sadly, they're not as entertaining to a mass audience, which is a shame, because it's far more engrossing than most action-y sci-fi movies that come out. And that's a real shame. So, you know, I guess it's one of those things that I think we see a lot with certain types of movie, where certain genres go away because they're not forced into treating them the same way, or forced into doing them the same way. You know, all of a sudden we have the excess. It's kind of like, once upon a time, movies were made in black and white because they had to be made in black and white. But now, every so often, when a director says, no, I'm going to make this in black and white because it's important to me and it's going to be part of the film, it's an artistic choice. It's a creative choice. So when you see a film like Arrival, and that's not to say that every film that has, like, invasions or shooty bang bang things in it don't have something serious to say, aren't coming from a skilled place. Like, of course they can be too, but there's obviously a lot of fluff that is just greenlit because we want to make money, and the creative process is strong behind them. I think with a movie like this, it might not end up. There's still every chance it could fail. There's every chance that it might not function. But at the very least, I think you look at a movie like this and you say, well, if this is how they're going to treat this film, at the very least, the director thinks he knows what he's doing. he thinks he's got a plan. He thinks he's got something to say. Versus, I don't know, Roland Emmerich's got Moonfall, I think it's called, coming out in, like, February.
Looks great. Can't wait.
Do you think he's got a mission statement with that movie, or something he wants to explore?
Oh, yeah, it is about the end of the world, a natural disaster.
Oh, a subject new to him, yeah, one that he's not explored before. Yes,
I'm sure America will save the day somehow, or maybe not. Maybe it's just humanity can't work together enough to stop the moon, and therefore we all die.
Like,
I mean, the trailer looks like the moon's pretty close. I don't know how they're going to get out of it.
Because when you look at a movie like this, and obviously it was like a story first that was written by like one person, so maybe there wasn't a conversation. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, there was a meeting of people who were coming up with a story. You can imagine the story behind this would be like, hey, what if there was a story that examined how we, like, our basic instincts in a situation are something we should challenge and try and be better, right? It's kind of like almost like a Star Trek or a Superman-esque thing of just like, we have to try and be better and like not like come to our paranoia or our suspicions and believe in something good, right? And then you look at the Moonfall concept and go, someone in a room went, what if the moon fell out of a sky? And that's like, that's it. that was the pitch.
Oh, these movies all like Arrival and stuff. I always think of Contact, which is a movie we'll be reviewing soon. Thank you to the patrons. But there's a line in it where Eleanor is asked by like a committee, if you only could ask one question to the aliens, what would it be? And she said, I would ask them how they did it, how they got from where they were in civilization, where we are, to the point where we were not going to kill ourselves anymore and we can keep evolving and we're better. Like, how were they able to get through this part of history that we're in right now without destroying one another? I like that line a lot because obviously I think about it, but it also applies to these types of films, or even when we talk about Star Trek, like how humanity made it to the point where we don't have to worry about things. We're at a place of peace.
And I want to make it clear, I'm not shitting on anything that is just fun schlock. I love some good fun schlock. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's like 75% of what I watch. Might even be closer to 80.
Well, they make
this
a lot.
Year.
Well, let's be honest, they make a lot more of it. So it's even for people who try to avoid it, it's still quite easy to have it to be more than half of what they watch, just because so much of it exists. And a lot of it's bad, but some of it can be really fun. I'm not downplaying that, but this is such a refreshing thing, and I think we've been quite lucky in the past decade or so, where it feels like every year or two there's at least one great science fiction film. Sometimes there's even more than that.
Thank you, Denis Villeneuve.
I'm not thanking him because I think this is the only one from him, but
I just can't believe you.
But I think there's been a good number of solid, really high production value science fiction films over the last decade or so, basically from about 2009 up to now. And
Star Trek.
Not Star Trek, no.
I know. District 9.
Well, I was thinking Moon, but yes, Moon and District 9, 2009, and then from there, a lot of good stuff since. So,
and the Star Trek reboot, which is fun.
Yeah, but that falls into the schlock side of things. I'm not talking about that.
Captain Kirk. It's okay if Captain Kirk's a little schlocky.
I appreciate you want to do the whole Trek fangirl thing, but I'm trying to make a point. I'm trying to make a very serious point about modern science fiction cinema, and you're shitting all over it.
I agree. I think horror has also come around to where I like it again. Because there was a good period of time where just, if it was a horror movie, it was garbage.
I mean, there's still a lot of bad horror, obviously, but yeah, there's definitely a higher concentration of good quality films at the top of the
recent years, I think. Yeah.
I mean, I was able to do a top 50 horror movies of the decade for that last decade there, and me and Tim went back to the 2000s and tried to do it for the 2000s, and we had to make it a top 25 because we just couldn't like have 50.
I bet the 90s would be tough too. I mean, you have nostalgia, but
90s is tougher. 90s is worse.
Yeah.
90s are 80s. You can do it. There's a lot of schlock, admittedly, if you included in the 80s, but the 80s did have a good amount of good schlock though, like good schlock, not totally. The bad schlock that we get a lot of since then. But science fiction though, I mean, we I think, did we do a decade list at one point? I think we did, maybe the last decade. We did 2010s.
I think so.
Maybe we did days, I can't remember. But you know what? We've not done a countdown in a while. We may have to do one soon. Maybe we'll just pick a decade and go for it.
Maybe it'd be a Christmas present.
Yeah. Did we ever get around to doing the 70s, or did we always plan to do more 70s movies first?
We still have quite a list of 70s films to watch.
We do. Maybe we'll have to do a 70s month soon and maybe knock out a top 25 or something afterwards.
Okay, this is all behind the scenes stuff. We should move on.
We should move on, but I'm just, we've got the ideas cooking here. Ideas cooking. Arrival's very good. It's an excellent film. It is a modern... I like it even more, I think, this time than I did the first time, which is saying something. I'm probably going to go about a 0.5 up from my original score. I highly recommend it. I think it's a smart science fiction film that has an emotional core that I think very much works. And I think it lands and hits home, which is the problem I have with Villeneuve's films since, is that I don't really care about his characters and think they're kind of, I don't know, bland and dry, and I don't really feel anything from them.
What about Arrival, though?
Yeah, I know. I kind of already made my point, which was that I think this does have characters that I connect with.
All right. I'm just tired of you shitting on movies I like.
Hey, I wasn't even going to bring them up. You brought them up more than I did in the last 15 minutes. Every chance you get, you keep dropping Villeneuve's to thank for science fiction. Save science fiction. Every 2 minutes.
Yes.
I disagree.
He's a very exciting director in science fiction.
Well, after a short break, where Tara had to tell me off, we're ready to go in.
I don't like Denis Villeneuve. He's overrated. He doesn't make good sci-fi. Blah, 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 blah. His characters are bland. He looks bland. Why is everything so bland? People who like him are bland.
We're ready to go into spoilers, everyone. Okay, we're ready to talk about the movie. And I think for the sake of talking about this, we'll talk about it kind of in order after a bit. But, I feel like we'd rather start with the ending, like the twist, if you want to call it that, and then sort of apply that to the rest of the film as we're talking about it. Because...
that's how I watched it this time, since I was watching it, not for the first time.
Yeah, me too. And honestly, I think it made some moments work really well. The ideas of what it meant that... these what look like flashbacks turned out to be flash forwards. Like those ideas, the idea that she knew her daughter's entire life that her daughter was going to die young from a disease, like that is a wonderful concept. Wonderful, not in a good, like, not it's a good story. It's just a sad story, but wonderful in a concept way, and in a like exploration of drama kind of way, and how we view our lives and relationships, and like that side of it was just wonderful. It's like there was so much depth added to the story in retrospect that the second it introduced that idea. Like I was enjoying the movie when I first saw it. I was enjoying the intrigue, the communication, and certainly I was also enjoying the sort of the struggle of all of the military leaders and all of the other countries are starting to get shaky, and they want to just attack things and they want to just shoot their guns. And we have the sensible people saying, no, we should communicate and understand each other. We should form a dialogue, blah, blah, blah. Right? That debate was the central core of the film for me on my first viewing. And it's still a very important core of the film. But once you get to that twist, which is that this alien language that she is trying to understand comes from a species that view time differently. And that by learning the language, she starts to view time differently as well. And I think what's very notable watching it again and like knowing that all the way through is, other than the opening, which obviously has this great montage set to a Max Richter track. It's not part of the score. It is an independent piece of music by Max Richter called On the Nature of Daylight, I believe is the title of the track. And it plays at the start and the end, because of course it does, because it's time circular and all that stuff. I was thinking during the film that technically you could have like called this something like Tenet and it would have worked.
I was thinking, I bet Nolan wish he made this movie.
No, here's the thing though, you couldn't, because it would give away where it goes. I think because as soon as he announced Tenet, right, as soon as he announced that title, we all immediately started going, okay, backwards and forwards the same, like how does that play into the plot? Like even before we saw an image, we started to try to like deconstruct what it meant for the movie. And I think if you were thinking along those, you may not guess it exactly, but I think if you were thinking along those lines, I think the revelation that happens when Amy Adams like remembers a word or hears a word in the present day and then uses it in a flash forward or flashback. The idea that she's actually kind of like her mind is going back and forth in time.
And at this point, she hasn't asked the aliens who this little girl is yet. So she's still like figuring out. And I don't know where I was when I figured it out. I'm pretty sure I figured it out when she did.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's much before then to really crack it. But I think that moment.
There's so much to see when you know it though. But like when you're watching it the first time, like I don't think I got it until she mentioned that line of who is this little girl? I don't know her.
No. That's when you got it? That late?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. No.
I think so.
No, it's the moment where our daughter in the I'm going to call them flashback because when you first watch it, they feel like flashbacks, right? You think she had a daughter that died, and that's why she's so sad at the start of the movie. And she's just really sad in general. She's a sad person. She's a sad, lonely Amy Adams. But you think that's why she's sad, is that she had a daughter that died as a teenager, and she's just kind of, waddling through life as a linguist, teaching linguistic courses at university.
Some university.
Yeah. Now, it's the moment where her daughter in the flashback asks for a word. What does it mean when two sides come to an agreement? And she's like, a compromise, and something more sciencey. And that sort of scene ends, she wakes up, and then she goes to a conversation about the plot with the other characters. And Jeremy Renner, during the scene, brings up the phrase non-zero sum game. And then it cuts back to the flashback, and it's like Amy Adams has just realised that and goes, non-zero sum game. That's the moment. That's the moment where the movie kind of opens its doors and says, this is what this is. And the movie was enjoyable and was a good kind of grounded science fiction film about the struggles of not letting our hysteria get to us and keeping a cool head and being open to ideas and all that sort of stuff, right? It was a good story like that. Once it introduced that, it kind of just recontextualized the entire thing and became this really smart, layered science fiction film that also became about just the idea that she knew her daughter's entire life that she was going to die as a teenager from a disease and was never going to get to grow up and be an adult and go on and do these other things.
Well, yeah, and she would have to experience this tragedy of losing her daughter.
Yeah. And I think what really caught me watching it this time, this is my second viewing, is her very first line of the film and the narration during that opening montage is, I used to think this was the beginning of your story. Which feeds into the whole idea that there is no beginning, middle, and end in the way these aliens see time. The beginning of the story is really when she goes to the ship and all that. So, super interesting.
Yeah, the zero-sum game part made me go, okay, so there's something about the way she's learning the language is making her remember things from the past. It's purposely bringing up this memory still of her having this conversation with her daughter. But in actuality, it was pulling it from the future. And I don't think I got that until she said, who is this daughter? Or who is this girl? This little girl that you keep showing me.
Yeah, that's not what I thought. I thought you meant the same point I did, which is the non-zero sum game line. That was the moment it was like, oh, wait a minute, we're doing something different here. We're doing something timey-wimey. And it's funny because knowing it going in, there's a lot of lines before then that all of a sudden feel like they are setting that up without...
Oh, totally. There's so many... Yeah, there's so many things there. Even the lines from the daughter and when they talk about their father or her father and stuff. It's like, okay, well, yeah, that's clearly Jeremy Renner.
Yeah, but did you think that the first time, though?
No.
Yeah, because you didn't think she'd met him yet.
No.
It couldn't be him.
No.
But the fact that it turned out to be him didn't feel like a cheap, drama thing. It felt like...
No, they both went through this big thing together.
Yeah. And they were bonding over the course of the movie. They had all these little moments where they were kind of...
Yeah, and he was just in awe of her the whole time. So, yeah, and the movie made that clear too.
Yeah, the other thing that I really picked up on this viewing was when specifically the flash forwards started to happen. Because, like I said, other than the opening, which is kind of there to set up the movie and kind of almost trick you into thinking this is all backstory, is it's not until she actually starts to look at the alien language. The first time that she gets a proper glimpse of this little girl again is when she's been staring at one of the symbols, like one of their sentences. And it's not until she sees it more of them that she starts to see more moments of this daughter. Like, and it's fine, and like the first time you watch it, it makes this sense where she's like thinking more and more about this intense past as she's like doing this job, as she's like getting more stressed, as the weight of the world starting to like be felt on her shoulders. So it works.
She's saying that she's like losing a lot of sleep. There's like, because she's so obsessed with this language. I think Jeremy Renner like even asked her at one point, like, "Are you dreaming in their language?" and then we see like her looking at one of the aliens and her like seemingly just daydreaming about it. So like it just feels like the weight of everything is just on her, and she's so tired.
Yeah. All of it works that first time through, and it never feels like it's actually hiding something necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But when it gets that new meaning at the end, when it gets that new definition at the end, where you start seeing all these scenes play out again, where she's drawing the pictures, or she's in the little cowgirl outfit, or she's doing whatever, and the music's like the Max Richter music's playing again at the end, and it's this idea of just being happy that her life happened and not necessarily being sad because it had to be over. And even the idea that, you know, there's references throughout that the father left, and so you find out that Jeremy Renner's the father, and your instinct might be, well, that's a bit of a prick move. Like, what happened? But it also introduces this idea that at some point she told him what was going to happen to the daughter, and he just couldn't like deal with it. It was just too traumatic to consider that his daughter's life was going to end it, and he maybe didn't want to believe it, or he just...
Well, he was mad at her for choosing to have the daughter, because she tells him that she always knew that this was going to happen, and she chose to have her anyway. And he said, according to Amy Adams, he said that was a mistake. You made a mistake.
What do you think about that? Do you think it was a mistake?
I don't know.
It's a philosophical question, I suppose, at the core of it. Like, if you know a life is going to end that young, is it worth, not even just because of your pain from losing the child, but like in the sense that you know they can't have a full life and it's going to end young. Like,
well, I mean, yeah, the idea of not knowing and like going through it would be hard, but like obviously knowing, would you go through it? Like, I don't know. I couldn't really make that decision.
Or is this less a philosophical question and more of a question about altering the future? Because to Amy Adams, this isn't like a choice or a path. Like, she's basically just experiencing the rest of her life all the time, right?
I mean, she did ask, you know, Renner also, like, if you could see your entire life at once, would you change anything? And he said, I don't know. Like, I would probably be more open about my feelings. And I think he was just trying to find a window of opportunity to let her know that he liked her, but they had feelings for her. But doesn't really answer the question.
Yeah. It's an interesting idea, because it's because this movie doesn't like say that she's time traveling or anything like that. It kind of just raises this idea of like perceiving time differently. It's not, this is not about, you know, because we talk about time traveling and you've got portals or cars or whatever it may be that travels through time. You're going back and forth, and the future is the future and the past is the past. This is presenting it as, no, it's all kind of happening simultaneously, if you perceive it this way.
Well, I think in the beginning, because we're expecting to have this sad montage of her like having and losing a child, and then being sad teaching at this university, and she's just sort of sad all the time. I think because of that, like, it's easy to think like, why would she want to go through all that? But as we get more and more memories, like she does have a lot of happy memories also. So this could be like the best years of her life, and she also was never not going to want to have those.
Yeah, I mean, we never see anything beyond that part of her story. Like, I mean, we don't know if she's seeing beyond the years of her child, or if she's only seen up until that point. You could absolutely argue that maybe, yeah, like she can see her whole life and her happiest years are the 14, 15 years she has before her daughter gets sick, and that's what she wants. She wants to have those years. And
better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Isn't that the saying?
I think that works with like a loved one where they leave. I think
They break up.
Yeah, when the person
Yeah.
dies, I think it's a bit murkier because you're kind of, especially when you're creating that life. Maybe it's one thing if they already exist and you meet them, so they're going to die anyway. So you might as well be happy with them till they die. But if it's like a child that you're choosing to bring into the world, maybe that's where the ethical question starts to. And I don't have an answer. I'm just posing the question. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I don't know.
That's true. I mean, if you're asking me about like cows and chickens and stuff, I would say no.
Yeah.
No, it's not worth it. We should bring them into the world just to give them a life of torture, and a short life of torture and death. But it's harder when it's, a human.
Yeah, this girl's not been brought into the world for any purpose other than just to live, like any other human being. So it's a really interesting question, and it's questions like this that are posed that I think are really fascinating when science fiction can pull it off in a way that, you have this rush. The last like 20 minutes of this movie are such a rush because you have the revelation that these flashbacks are the future, and this is a life that she is going to have, not one that she's already had, and all of the dual happiness and sadness that comes with that because it does have such a bad ending. But it's not like she doesn't love the moments when she's in them. When we see like the moments, the night that they conceive this kid, presumably, where she's she's dancing and drinking, and she says, "You want to make a baby," or he says that to her, I think. Like that looks like a happy memory. She still experiences the happiness of the moment as it's happening. But
She's just remembering it early, before it happens.
In fact, one of my favorite lines in the whole movie is when she hugs Jeremy Renner at the end. She says, "I forgot how good it felt to be held by you," and that's a really great line. And like, part of me wants to see his reaction over her shoulder to that sentence.
Yeah,
but
maybe she's still loopy from all the gas she inhaled in the alien ship.
But I kind of love it. There's kind of like a.
Well, I mean, presumably she's done some explaining about like, because this whole scene happens after she's taken the phone and she's talked to the general and told him exactly what to say, and has ended this worldwide conflict.
Sure, and the logic of the scene, sure, like in terms of his understanding.
So maybe he does have a bit of an understanding of at least that.
Yeah, sure.
She sees times differently now.
But like, I love it on its own though, just because it kind of. It's obviously a very sweet line to say, but it's also this idea that there's going to be so much history that's not happened yet, and it's kind of like I don't know. It's not quite like a Kyle Reese thing, right? I'm not saying it is, but it's this almost weird perspective on a love, because even though it lasts obviously much longer than Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese, this idea that it's going to be timed, right? It's not forever. It's not until their death. There is a period of time where they are going to be happy together, and then it's going to be over. And the idea that she can look back in this with the hindsight of like, because you experience these things differently, like during and after, right? You have this like, people talk about the good old days, for example, right? And that's because you don't realize till after the fact how good certain things were. You take things for granted, and all of a sudden you have nostalgia for something that you didn't realize how much you liked it at the time. You just realize how much it meant to you after. And that's not entirely true for romantic things necessarily, but like this idea of having this perspective of after the fact and sort of missing it and coming back to it, but having that be the feeling you have the first time you hug this person. I guess it just encapsulates the entire idea of the aliens, like, vantage point of time. But
I mean, really, they're embracing like this for the first time.
Exactly. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is it's such a smart line of dialogue that has meaning to it on its own. It has meaning to it that relates to the themes of the film, and it has meaning to the theory of the film. And some lines are just really good, and it's just a really good line. And the fact that we don't get to see his reaction, and we can sort of leave that to our imaginations, leave that to the ambiguity, I think is basically, and I think it actually might be the last line of the film. Now I'm thinking about it. It may be right before it fades to. I think they're hugging is the last thing we see.
I think it is the last line.
Yeah. So you've got that emotional stuff. All that's fantastic. All of that is this heart to the film that is really bittersweet, but it is saying something kind of positive about life and still loving the time we have, both on to ourselves, but also with each other, and like however long that is.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have kind of like one of the most interesting solutions to the crisis that's set up in the film. Over the course of the film, we see like, because to begin with, all the nations that have ships are all like collaborating, and they all have their own interpreters. They all have their own
like a Zoom meeting going on.
Yeah. And over the course of the film, they start to get tetchier, especially once the word weapon is translated, and I'm not really sure if the aliens what they mean by that. And Amy Adams is repeatedly saying, look, weapon could be a misunderstanding. It could also just mean tool. It could mean something else. It ends up meaning gift, of all things.
Right. And it's because the Chinese group, that their ship, they've been using the game of mahjong to help with the translation. And because they only have game words that they're using, weapon is one of them.
Yeah, and I think this movie does a really good job of like explaining to all us dum-dums all these all these intricate linguistic ideas. Like when she explains that, yeah, if you like teach someone who doesn't speak anything, but you only teach them words that are associated with battle and victory, all of a sudden everything they say sounds menacing. Because they can't communicate in anything that doesn't sound like, because she uses chess as the example, but everything's about dominating, everything's about killing the opponent. If that's the only thing they can say, then they're going to sound like they're threatening, when really they're just using the words that you've given them.
Right.
So, yeah. And just like simple ideas of like, how do you start to break down their language? I love seeing like them trying to show, okay, we've established that she's Louise and he's Ian, so here's Ian walking. Can we teach them what walking means?
Right.
I think one of my favourite little sort of technical points that she brings up in the film is when Forrest Whitaker's getting pissy about like what she's like trying to teach them, and she's like, well, this is the question you want to ask, isn't it? And it's like, what is your purpose on Earth? Like, and she just sort of breaks down why every single word in that sentence needs to be like how we get to those words.
Right.
They have to understand
how do they know what a question is, or that we're asking one?
Yeah, and how do they know what we mean by they? Do we mean just them? Do we mean their entire species? So there's so many
Abbott and Costello.
Yeah, so many layers to unravel there. But
yeah, that's a very good scene. It's broken down incredibly well, and exactly for us dum-dums to follow. But also like for it just adds a sense of urgency too for like Forrest Whitaker's side of things, for the military side of things. Like, look, at any moment any of these other nations could like break out in an all-out war against the aliens. So like there is some some urgency, I suppose is the only word I could think of. I'm not a linguist.
Yeah. I mean, just on the but before I get to that point, on the linguistic stuff, just still for a second, I do really appreciate that it's always engrossing. I think the part of the reason why it's always engrossing is because even though we're not all linguistics professors, I mean, we're not all people who even speak multiple languages. Obviously, many do, but not all of us do. We don't, right? Specifically.
No.
But every single thing that's raised, every single question that's raised makes sense to us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every single time she says, no, we have to sort of understand this part before we can get to this part, it always makes sense. And it makes the art of, like, trying to communicate with someone who has a language that you can't compare anything to fascinating. And it always makes us understand what the problem is and how they're trying to solve the problem.
Right.
That is very good writing. Which, again, is impressive coming from the writer of Bloodshot. So, although, let's be honest here, I'm sure they had some consultants. I have no doubt that they had some consultants for this.
Sure.
There's no way they didn't. But yeah, on the nations thing, yeah, one of the points that's brought up is that, like, yeah, we're not like one civilization with one leader. Like, the planet is broken down into many factions, and that's a problem. And obviously, my suspicion during this was like, oh, these aliens seem pretty smart. They probably know that. In fact, that's probably why they've split up their thing into 12, and they're given part of the puzzle to 12 different nations,
right.
so that everyone has to work together. Yeah,
everyone has to work together. But if it were, if it were any other movie, then if this were the day the Earth stood still, then there would be no progress made at all in that front, and we would go to war with each other just at the possibility that the aliens might be working with one nation only.
I love the idea that aliens will just land in one nation, but it won't be like the ones you would assume it would be. It'll be like Iceland, and all of a sudden Iceland is the most powerful country on the planet because they have the alliance with the aliens.
Right.
They made a deal, and all of a sudden they're the most powerful entity on the planet.
That's funny. Yeah.
So that's, I don't know, that amuses me.
Well, I mean, even in this film, like, it's cool that there's representation for all the nations and everybody's trying to like work together, and there is progress made, but it still all comes from America. We're still number one.
Well, I mean, that's true to an extent, but that's just because it's American funded. So that's the reason.
Yeah.
The movie, that is. So, but I do like the implication in the film, though, that they intentionally give Amy Adams' character the part of the language that unlocks this, because it's not like all of the other people that are working on this around the world don't seem to be getting the ability to see time the way she does. It feels like they have specifically chosen her because of maybe how she's approached the situation, because she chose to take off her hazmat suit, because she's chosen to try and teach them or communicate in the ways that she has. They've recognized someone in her that is maybe sympathetic, or someone who's intelligent or level-headed, who might actually
the right person for it.
Yeah. So
for getting this job done.
I think I appreciate that side of it, and I also, like I say, so I wanted to get to the solution to the conflict, because I really love it, is that everything seems to be breaking down, but Amy Adams, because this is just after she's had this realization that maybe, like, you know, the whole non-zero sum game thing, right? She's just had that moment, and that's what inspires her to like drive out to the ship herself. And at this point, because there was a terrorist attack on the ship from some soldiers who basically, I don't
Listen
know.
to some YouTube videos.
Yeah, they basically were listening to what's that asshole's name? Alex
Jones.
There you go. Right, they'll listen to stuff like that, saying, "Oh, we should just attack them because, you know, America or something." So
yeah, because the alien's going to turn all the fish gay or something. Yeah.
But she goes out on her own, and the ship's risen up higher, but they send in like a little pod for her to get in so they can bring her up. And what I love a couple of details about this scene. I love that up until this film, because we can't communicate, everything's just everything we get information wise is just through what our characters can interpret themselves. But because she's starting to get it, and because she's starting to learn the language completely, because she's starting to like know her own knowledge from the future, where she's written a book explaining how to read this language, where she's teaching classes about how to read this language, it's actually kind of informing her already, not like giving her the knowledge in present day.
Right.
So we start getting subtitles for the alien language, and it's like, well, okay, this is interesting, and we start getting excited.
I love that it's still a little broken English, you know, in the
sure, yeah,
like it's sentences that are pieced together, but you get the gist of what they're saying.
Yeah, they're not cracked every single nuance of the language, but enough to order dinner, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So the solution ends up being wonderful. I love this. I think mechanically, because as this movie was building, I remember being a little bit worried when I was watching it, thinking, I really like everything this is doing. I love all the themes it's playing with. I love the moral debate that's going on. But like, I'm unclear how we're going to solve this without all the aliens like somehow learning English and sending a message that makes sense or something. Like, how are we going to do this in a way that feels true to what this movie's been, right? And we introduce this mechanic of time in the daughter, and the solution to this conflict is that the President of China? General? Okay. The leader of China. Yeah, leader's a good word. The leader of China is that we get a scene in the future where they're at an event celebrating that everything's went okay, and the leader of China comes up to her and says, "I wanted to meet you because I knew it was important to come and show you my phone number, like my private phone number." And he shows her the phone number, and says, "I'll never forget what you said to me." And he leans in and says, this statement to her in Mandarin or whatever. And this movie is about her phoning the leader of China to make, because it's shown throughout the film that they're kind of instigating the more hostile attack, and they're influencing other countries. So the idea is that if China step down, a lot of other countries will step down, and that'll kind of open up the doors to communication. And I love this because this man who is the one instigate. Well, I mean, maybe he's not personal. We don't see enough of him to know exactly who's talking in his ear or whatever. But we just, he's the face of the side that are making things worse.
Mm-hmm.
Him in the future, he is communicating through time to Amy Adams because he knows it's important that this goes through and that he stopped doing what he was going to do. And he feels that so the effect of everyone working together and having the better relations and having this hopeful future, the hopeful future in itself is what is going to solve the problem in the past using this new, gift, this time vantage point. So everything about her, like getting the phone and making this call and having this happen to shut things down, I thought was way more exciting than like most action climaxes I see to movies these days. I thought it was riveting, and I thought it was true to what the film was, especially once it introduced that neat time mechanic. And it was so simple and didn't feel like it was cheating. It felt like, no. She gets the phone number from him himself. He gave it to her because he knew this was important. I love it. I love everything about how that plays out.
Yeah. Her reaction at the party still seems to be a bit surprised about it or unsure about it, which I thought was interesting. Just because she's, it's almost like she's living her life the way she's supposed to. And she has to know that that he's going to give her this phone number because in the past she already accepted the phone number. So actually this part kind of breaks my brain a little bit. You don't think there might be a little bit of a plot hole, like because if he didn't do that, then she would never have the phone number. So what is his motivation to do that other than like he was always going to? It kind of breaks my brain.
Oh, that's a plot hole at all. The movie makes it very clear that like they see time done in a non-linear fashion. So it happens because it was always going to happen.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why all of their sentences are circles, because it's always, it's always a loop. It's always a predetermined kind of thing. If you're asking why her reaction reads the way it does, the way I read that is that she's basically discovering. I don't necessarily think she sees time all the time, if that makes sense. Like I believe it's kicking in at these various moments where she's having these dreams or she's having these instances, and I think I think you could read that moment of like surprise of her realizing it's this moment, like not knowing it was going to be this day or not knowing it was going to be like right now, kind of thing. But rather than shock that it happened at all, I guess. Okay,
sure. Okay. I don't know. I remember watching this movie the first time and going, I just don't know about this. Like if this one piece is the only part where I'm just like, but why would the general just do that without any motivation to?
Because he got the call. He remembers it.
Yeah. Because he gave her the phone number. Right. Okay. I mean, I'm sure it works.
Look, think of the profound effect that hearing his wife's dying words over the phone, and presumably some instructions as well, I imagine. But his wife's dying words over the phone from this random woman who took a risk calling him and somehow got his number. Which, like, how did she get that number? If he's thinking that, like, how did she get my private number? It's not like his number's going to be on the yellow pages, right?
Yeah.
It's like he's the leader of China. It's probably a pretty secure phone line.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
I guess it's just like maybe I would have less of an issue with it if she came across his phone number somehow in the future or as an accident, which would be ridiculous, but like
Yeah, I
because
hate
he's
that.
a general, versus him purposely giving it to her for this reason.
But that's why I love it so much, is because he's this changed man who's willing to like help with this. Like the fact that he believes in this so intently is what I think makes this wonderful. That's what makes it heartwarming to me, and like hopeful and optimistic, and like this, like we can come together. The fact that he's willing to do this is what tells me that it works and everything's going to be okay. And that's the uplifting kind of part of the movie. Like the daughter stuff is like this bittersweet thing because of her tragic ending. This is the stuff that's like, humanity has some hope. This movie, if nothing else, is about having some hope that humanity can somehow work together. And it takes this, this wild thing from an outside force to make it work. If she doesn't get this ability and doesn't pull this off, then this would never have happened, and the fighting would have started and would have all went downhill. That's I think it's an interesting idea, and
sure, yeah. It's just a bit of a chicken and an egg problem for me.
Well, is there much else to talk about? Do you want to go back and talk about any specific? I mean, we kind of glossed over the idea that there's like the extremists who decide to try and sabotage and start a war by putting a bomb into the ship.
Yeah, inside of the military encampment too. Like there's multiple of them. There's like a group of, I'm assuming, enlisted men who are getting, seduced by this propaganda. They don't like that their aliens are here, and they feel threatened and want to take things into their own hands. We get a scene early on where one of them is talking on the phone to his like wife or daughter, and the daughter's like scared because they think the aliens are going to come and kill everyone. So it's kind of like that's like feeding into him as well. Right. Yeah.
So you get this sort of thing, but yeah, there's a group of soldiers who sort of plan to plant a bomb inside the alien ship. The aliens, though, seem to just know it's there the entire time, which makes sense given how they see time. They know what's going to happen. And unlike Amy Adams, I assume theirs is a lot more like consistent, where they just always see time like this. Right. Yeah. Which must make them very like patient. But I guess you always know when things are going to finish or happen, and you're experiencing it all simultaneously. So
it's a little bit of the Dr. Manhattan effect.
It's just Dr. Manhattan. Yeah. Yeah. But this is natural. He still
acts surprised when things happen, but like it's because in the moment, it's happening for the first time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but they don't act surprised. These aliens seem quite content.
Right. Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, they do blast the bomb away at the very last second, and they save Amy Adams.
And Jeremy Renner. Yeah.
And Jeremy Renner. Yeah, he's there too.
They kick them out of the room so that it saves them. I mean, I guess maybe that's the way you look at Amy Adams' reaction, even though you think, because you're thinking like, oh, why is she acting surprised in certain moments when she should have known this was always going to happen? I would read it more. Think of like the first like month that Dr. Manhattan was like jumping around time and he didn't realize what was happening. Like there would have been moments of confusion before he realized where he was or what was going on, or like,
yeah, it's just that this moment, like, I don't understand. There's only 2 moments in her entire life, at least up until this point, where she had to deal with General Shang. So like, why would it be surprising? Oh, this is the moment that you're going to give me your phone number.
I don't have this problem.
Yeah, I know.
I don't have this because there's so many moments with the daughter as well that when you look at them with knowing what she's going through, you can read as her being confused in the moment, or you can read her like she's fine in the early flashbacks, but that moment where she remembers the word because she just heard it in the present day scene, she looks confused in both scenes. Like she's like in that scene with the daughter, she's not like going, "Oh, I always knew I was going to remember this now." Like she's like, "Shit, I just like remembered that." Like it's more like present.
It's like a deja vu thing.
Yeah, it's more like present day Amy Adams is in the future scene at that point, right?
Right.
Or remembering that she had this in the past. Like, yeah. So it's the same thing as that. Yeah, if you want to think of it as like a weird deja vu-esque moment of like, oh, I'm in this moment now.
Right.
But yeah. So, but that's definitely, it's worth mentioning because showing like how people are corrupted, and they have this idea that we're now scared of them retaliating because they won't understand that this was like a small group of extremists and not representative of all of humanity.
Yeah.
Is a.
Although they do seem to know
Big
it's going to
deal.
happen because they literally wait till the very last second to like do something about it. So they know how much time they have to communicate with Amy Adams still.
And it also makes sense they don't retaliate in any way because they know how this is all going to end. They know that ultimately they're going to succeed, and that Amy Adams is going to get this done, and like they are going to like accept the gift and work together.
Right.
All with the goal that in 300 years, when they need Earth's help, like
3,000.
3,000 years, we'll be able to communicate, because at that point, people have been studying the language for, millennia.
Not just that, but humanity will be at peace. We'll be able to survive.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if they don't specifically say it, but I also kind of got like an impression that we might not exist as a civilization in 3,000 years if they didn't intervene.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. But they never say
we're like the whales in Star Trek 4.
Yeah, but they never say it though, because I thought they were going to think, because I think I was like getting some memories of thinking this, and then I was surprised that they never actually said, because you won't be here if we don't.
Well, I mean, why go back 3,000 years then? Like, if you just need to be able to communicate, and it only takes a short period of time, to a couple of months to be able to communicate, why go back 3,000 years? I'm pretty sure they chose 3,000 years because they need to save humanity first.
I mean, that could be an implication as to why they picked this particular time period, but it doesn't. Like, we don't know how long it takes to get here. We don't know how easy it is to just choose to go. We don't know.
Well, they just turned into mist when they want to leave.
Like, I feel like we don't know enough to answer those questions. I don't think we have any definitive things to say about any of that. Because we don't know what other like reasons why they might do they have the freedom to just choose, like when. I kind of took it as, no, we'll give you this gift now because you'll see the fruit that it bears over this time period, so that when we come back and ask for help, you'll know that our intentions are good and that we gave you this thing that, so we're thinking of, we saved you from destroying yourselves with war and climate change and whatever else, but like, more just, you will thrive and you will be like a futuristic society. You'll all have flying cars and you'll all be hunky-dory and whatever else. I don't know. Everyone can ride the dick-shaped rocket to the orbit.
Nice.
The topical reference for you.
I saw that Tom Hanks turned it down.
Oh, there you go.
He was offered before Shatner.
Because he was in Apollo 13.
I suppose.
Can't offer it to Bill Paxton though.
Nah, he ain't here no more.
He should go to space. He would have been great in space. Kevin Bacon's around though. You could put Kevin Bacon in space.
I suppose. Or Gary Sinise, since he never got to go. He was the astronaut who's left behind.
If Bill Paxton was still alive and they said, hey, all three of you, we're offering you to go to space, but not Gary Sinise.
That's so sad.
He doesn't get to go. He got to go in Mission to Mars, though. It's fine.
That's true, yeah.
You got to go to Mars.
That wasn't a very good movie.
And he even got to land in Mars as well.
Oh, yeah.
You got the whole shebang. You got to do much more.
Gotta have a cool barbecue.
I'm pretty sure they had a barbecue in Apollo 13 like, as well. I feel like I remember a scene with them having a barbecue.
I think it was just a 60s thing.
Also Texas, right? It's Houston.
Yeah.
You know? It's barbecue country. Makes sense. Yeah.
Anyway, should we rate it?
Okay, I guess I'm done talking about the movie. I think it's emotional. I think it's got some big science fiction ideas, and then just as you get into the third act, it also slides in some really cool sci-fi mechanics, which also further informs some of the ideas that it has about the human experience and how we choose to do things that we do, and how it might change. Like, the idea that this Chinese leader changed his entire like outlook and what he was going to do because he had foresight. And it's in the same way that if we have hindsight, obviously hindsight, we always say hindsight's 20/20. It's a saying for a reason, right? That we'd make different choices if we knew how it was going to turn out. but now we will know how it's going to turn out, so we can make the choice with the full bouquet of information. Like, there's so much going on in this film, and it appeals to the best of us to, you know, not shoot our big rocket cannons at things first and try and communicate instead, and don't always think the worst. Lots of nice ideas.
I agree.
Lots of nice ideas. All right, Tara, would you like to rate Arrival?
Yes. Yeah, I also really love the film. I think Villeneuve did a great job of giving us one of those old-timey feeling sci-fi stories in a very new look and a new approach and a very modern, modern storytelling. Especially with all like the Nolan like timey-wimey sci-fi plots around, and the Shyamalan twists. I'll post those kind of films that I don't know, it feels very modern, but it feels very classic sci-fi. And I really like this movie a lot too. I think this was probably the movie where I really noticed Villeneuve's name. And then he continued to make sci-fi movies after that. Well, with the exception of Sicario, which I also very much enjoy. But I am going to give this movie an 8.5.
I think what I really appreciate about the characters in this is that everything that Amy Adams has to like achieve, everything that she's trying to do, and everything that, because it is very much like a concept movie first and a character movie second, but what makes it work in this case is that the concept inherently shifts what the character is doing and what the character's journey is. So because it uses its you know, quote unquote gimmick, right, or its mechanics or its techniques, because it uses those sci-fi concepts to recontextualize her simple story and her relatively simple character. You know, her character's pretty simple. She is a good character who wants to communicate and extend a hand first. That makes us like her and root for her. And she has seemingly this sad past. Simple, right? But her character becomes so interesting because it becomes this vessel to explore all these ideas. And that's, I think, partly why I love it so much. So I am also going with an 8.5. I gave it an 8 at the time, and I'm going to go up to an 8.5 now because but it might even rise more as I see it again, because it has such a strong moral compass, and it poses a lot of really interesting questions, and yeah, I feel things at the end, and I think it tantalizes my thinking brain in a way that I really appreciate. So
that part of my brain is just dying off.
I love how the start of that sentence was a flub where you said "peart." That part of my brain.
Yes, that part also just shuts down after 10 p.m.
That part of my brain. But yes, 8.5.
Yeah, edit that part out.
Definitely not. I'm definitely not editing that one out. So there you go. That's Arrival.
Not too shabby.
Yes. So if you've enjoyed us being pretty positive on this, I suspect that next week might be a change of pace, because next week, despite my protest, Tara has demanded. She literally threatened to walk off the show. She threatened to walk off the show if I did not agree to do the next Planet of the Apes movie. And you're thinking, Pierre, but doesn't that mean you're doing Rise of the Planet of the Apes? I wish it meant that.
No sirree, Bob.
Because unfortunately there's a remake from 2001 directed by Tim Burton, who is maybe my most hated mainstream director. So, starring Mark Wahlberg, who I also think is mediocre.
Say hi to your mother for me.
What When did he say that? What's
That's
that
his nickname. Mr. Say Hi to Your Mother for Me.
You know far too much about Marky Mark. I'm just going to put that out there right now. So that's what's coming next time on the show is the 2001 Planet of the Apes. Tara's going to pose for the thumbnail. So here we go. Maybe try and look like you're, I don't know, thinking intently or something. I don't know. What is Amy Adams doing this? All right. 3, 2, 1, pose.
Me communicating with aliens.
Okay, I get it. For the audio listeners, she threw up the old Vulcan, live long and prosper fingers.
Peace and long life.
Yes. So, there you go. You can, of course, support everything we do by simply hitting the like button, commenting, subscribing, ding the bell for notifications on YouTube, or give us a 5-star review and rating on your podcast app of choice. That helps spread the show around and gives us more success, so please do so. You can also, of course, get us on the Twitters at Screams Midnight, which is now the home for all Male Fuzz movies, podcasts, and shows. So at Screams Midnight is the Twitter to follow these days. But of course, you can also support us financially. Can't you, Tara?
That's right, Peter. If you enjoy our reviews, please check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MobFuzzTV. And if you donate as low as $1 per month, you will get access to bonus episodes of The Ace. So you can check out all the transfer saga that we've done. We're currently working our way through the Tremors sequels. We did the first one on here, but we tend to do a lot of the cheaper sequels on the bonus episodes. So head over and check that out. And if you donate $5 per month, you will get access to these reviews 1 day early, and you will get to vote on what we watch once a month.
Yeah. The bonus movies aren't always sequels, though. There's a lot of standalone things in between the sequels. It's what you'll have to. I know it's because it's easy to remember the sagas, so you promote the sagas, but it's worth mentioning. You get, what did we do recently?
Future Zone, which was a sequel.
That was technically a sequel too. I'm trying to think of another standalone one. We do standalone ones too.
We did Extra.
Yeah, that was a memorable one. Yeah, Extra.
Rotor,
that was a memorable one. There you go.
Future Force we thought was a standalone.
Yes, but then there was Future Zone, which is a sequel to Future
That's
Force.
a fun one.
Yes. So check out the bonus episodes. So there you go. That is pretty much it. That is the show. That is the Atomic Cinema Experiment. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer at Salsa.